Hello, everyone. We're Casi Cielo.
Recording in progress.
Hi, everyone. I'm America Guido, and I will be the moderator of this panel. It's a pleasure for us, Casi Cielo magazine, to welcome you all to our first panel discussion about the complexity of fangirls. First, I would like you to introduce you all to the Casi Cielo members that will be hosting this panel. We have Galilea Velázquez, Bachelor in Economics, Regina Castañón, English Literature student, Gabriel Maraboto, Bachelor in Modern Languages, and Daniela Alcántara, Bachelor in Communication. This panel will be divided into 4 segments. The first one, building your identity as young women, with the company of Regina Castañón and Galilea Velázquez. The second one, finding yourself through fandom, with the company of Gabriel Maraboto and Daniela Alcántara. The third one, separating your personhood from the media you consume, with the company of all present members. And lastly, we will have our question segment. If you would like to have any questions, I will be taking notes of everyone. So you can, along the way, make any questions you would like. And that's it. So let's begin. I would like to give the word to my partner Galilea.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. Well, first of all, we want to start talking about the things that shape our identities. And I believe that there are 2 major things that shape our identities. And that would be the media we consume and also our environment, meaning socioeconomic background, color of our skin, even the shape of our bodies. So for media consumption, in my very personal experience, I was really young when I began learning English, but I didn't like it as much because my teachers were sort of mean from the get-go, from kindergarten. But then I discovered the Jonas Brothers, and that was what first brought me into fandom. And also when I met them, I thought to myself, well, I gotta learn English so that, when I meet them, I didn't, but when I meet them, I'll be able to, understand what they're saying to me, and they will be able to understand what I tell them. So it turns out that I was good at languages in general. That shaped my identity in a way, because as of right now, I don't know who I would be if I didn't have like a certain passion for languages. So yeah, that's regarding the media I've consumed. Obviously, along the way, there were other artists that I was able to get to know because of English. I was able to broaden the spectrum of things that I understood, things that I liked, obviously. Because when you learn a language, you don't just learn a language, but you learn a whole culture. So yeah, that obviously helps you shape who you are. And as for socioeconomic background and things of the sorts, I was raised a single child, only child, sorry, with a single mother. So in my case, I saw her work every day, all day, throughout my life. She still does that. And that I didn't know at the time, obviously, because I was very young, but it definitely helped shape my feminist beliefs and, my political identity as far as that goes, advocating for women's rights, advocating for single mothers' rights. And yeah, in general, I think that in my personal experience, those were the things that I could take away from this, from what helps you shape your identity. And that definitely shaped my identity as a fangirl and as a woman.
Yes, and regarding also this experience of, sort of connecting it to what you were saying of what shaped your feminist beliefs, I think that especially regarding this panel, because we're all women, we grew up as women, we have lived the experience of the world as women. I think something that is very prevalent among girls and women, and I think among everyone, but in very particular ways for girls and women, is the expectations that are placed upon our shoulders. And well, yeah, that is another factor that I think really shapes our identities and the way we move in the world, even the way we grow up to be and the way we interact with everyone. So I think expectations, especially, are, at least in my experience, have been this constant contradiction where I felt trapped between, a rock and a hard place. I felt watched by this omnipresent eye that, favors male feelings and standards and tells me that everything I do is not quite right for some or other reason. And yeah, so I think we are trapped in this spectrum of you're either too loud or you're too quiet, you're too self-centered or too careless. You can never really fulfill the things that your environment really expects you to be. And these roles are set upon you that you really cannot feel because they are these really unattainable standards, really. And I think we have seen this very much, for example, in body image, right? Or in the way we look, the beauty standards, for example. But it is really everywhere, I believe, from your job, from the occupations you want to have, or even the way you relate yourself to other people, your relationships, like friendships, romantic relationships, family relationships. I think it is all affected by expectations, right? And from an early age, we are fit into molds that, no one can actually fill. We're trained to take roles that no woman can actually adopt to perfection. And those are not our realities. Our realities are flawed, and they are as flawed as complicated as the next person's are. And really, why are we meant to feel all the expectations assigned to our particular gender, and also to we are Mexican women, so also to our particular nationality or particular socioeconomic status or particular age. And I know I've tried to feel at some point in my life all at them once, but I can't be, at least in my case, like I can't be both the perfect student and also the great independent friend and the model daughter. You can't be every single thing to perfection at the same time. And I think that's something that really shapes our identities. And also, the way we even the way we speak and the way we express ourselves, like we are taught that our ideas are not as valid, or they're not as well, they don't have that same weight or validity or even the same importance. So I think that has also shaped, for example, the way my fangirl life has developed as a woman, because our likes are thought to be, well, not as important, or they're thought to be really childish. And there's this expectation that if you come to a certain age, you must leave everything you like behind, right? You must become an adult, and you must become a woman, and you must become, I don't know, really either like this really independent girl boss, or you have to become like the perfect wife who cares for her husband and her kids. So it is all about that, about these molds and expectations, and just I think that is something that is really heavy upon our shoulders. And I know we've discussed this among us, and I'm sure other people who have grown up, socialized as women, or that identify as women, have felt at some point in their lives. So yeah, that's and I think that also leads us to like the ways we have at least Lea and I have tried to sort of express ourselves outside of those molds and outside of those expectations. So yeah, I don't know if you would like to comment on that, Gali.
Yeah, definitely. I believe that through fandom, we were also able to discover some of our interests, and that too shapes who we are. And it does so at any age, really, because again, from personal experience, I can say that, well, I identify as a bisexual woman, first and foremost. Um, and I can say that I've liked women and girls since I was very young. I've known that my whole life. But, being bisexual or gay, any part of the LGBTQ plus spectrum, really, is a way. It's not a destination. I don't. You can say, yeah, I'm bisexual and this is it. This is my LGBTQ plus road, and this is the end of it. Because, for example, me last year, I believe, I read this very beautiful fan fiction. And it was the first gay fan fiction I've ever read. And it was really life changing because throughout my life, I've never seen LGBTQ plus couples being represented in a way that their stories were happy. And that really struck a nerve because I came to the realization that even though I've consumed media, LGBTQ plus media, or yeah, there was never a happy ending. So I read this fan fiction in which the characters went through very difficult times, but at the end, they found happiness and love. And I thought to myself, maybe I could experience that love too, because again, I knew I liked girls, but I never really saw myself with a girl. And I think that was because of the media I consumed, that it was never represented in a way that it was portrayed as happy. It was always sad. And obviously, as a person, you do not want a sad life. So, reading that also inspired me very much to write my own stories. I've always liked writing, creating stories generally, but inspired me to write. But most importantly, it helped me find myself in a way that I feel comfortable now, um, thinking about girls in a romantic way. And that happened when I was 24 years old, 23 years old. So I think, yeah, shaping your identity, it just never ends. It's an ongoing road, but it can be a very interesting one, and it can lead to very interesting discoveries, such as the one I made, back when I read that. So, yeah.
I think it's very important to find, like, the way we find the ways, external ways that we find to shape our identity are also like very important. It's not just the things we consume, but also the things that help us express ourselves. And for you, fan fiction, for example, reading and writing fan fiction, and for me, I think sometimes it has been this sort of artistic endeavors like photography or drawing. And I also found this sort of passion or like for photography, which is the thing that I do the most outside of our magazine, for example, which is another way of expressing ourselves. I was really young when I thought, like, this is cool. Like, I didn't know people could, like, this was an actual art or something that you could use to convey both your identity and your feelings and your experiences, just whatever you would like to do, and your even your vision of how you see the world, because I think that's a lot of what photography really is about, just presenting a vision of how you see the world, and it shapes you. So when I also like started saying, like, thinking, where do people take inspiration, right, to do this very creative stuff within photography, I found a lot of inspiration in the things that I liked, other media like literature. I've always loved books, so bringing this sort of a scene to life through photography, or that I read in a book, or bringing lyrics to life from music. I think I lean a lot into bringing words into images. So that was very important for me. Like, throughout, if I look back on it, like when I started doing photography 5 years ago, was I think when I got like a camera as a gift for one of my birthdays, almost 6 years ago actually. I was 15, now I'm turning 21. Yeah, I lost my train of thought for a bit, but yeah, that was music and books were the ways where I found inspiration. And looking back on, for example, the last year where I couldn't leave my house, and the fact that when I did photography was often outside my house, I sort of leaned back onto those things, music and books, to find inspiration to do that stuff. And I remember I did this sort of series of photographies like inspired on BTS's Fake Love, because that was one of the songs that got me into BTS. And I really felt that song. And I loved the lyrics. I thought they were very poetic. And I wanted to express that sort of that like for BTS and for the lyrics in some way. And I think it's very beautiful to create something out of the things that shape you, that shape your identity, and that it is itself shaping your identity even further. So it's this constant journey, as you were saying. So yeah, I love that we can also find inspiration to create new things out of the things that shape us, and maybe even shape other people. That's an extra, but yeah, that sort of self-expression, I think it is great for the development of our identities.
Yeah, definitely. And I think also it's really important to add that most of us, we come from Casi Cielo, which is our project, and we're all, Army. We met through BTS, but we also developed certain hobbies that also, made us go into Casi Cielo. For me, writing, for you, photography, and the others will talk about their experiences now. But yeah, that's a very interesting way to see things, because it's what has shaped you that has led you this far and to the point where you are in life. So I like to think a lot of the butterfly effect, and what would have happened if I hadn't heard like that one BTS song in the radio back then, so maybe I wouldn't be here right now. So that's very interesting.
Okay, with that, we conclude our first part of the panel. Now I would like to give the word to Garie.
Yeah, thank you so much. So me and Danny, we're going to be talking about finding yourself through fandom. And for this, I'm kind of going to go way, way back to 2010, 2011, and I'm going to tell you my entire fangirl life story, but I promise I have a point. And when I first started getting into fandom, I was very, very young. So like I said, it was about 2010, 2011. I was around 11 to 12 years old at the time. 12, 13 is more accurate. And my first fandom ever was Harry Potter. It was, I remember distinctly being like in awe of people who were really passionate fans about anything at all, because I had never felt that. And I was like, that seems cool, but that's just not me. And then the Harry Potter craze hit me like a truck right when it was ending. So the last movies were coming out, and suddenly I got interested in it, and I was addicted to it. It was like all I could think about day in and day out. So I naturally started spending a lot of time online, because I'm a 2000s child, so to speak. I was born in 98, so I'm still not a little bit 90s, but I grew up in the 2000s. So the internet was like coming along, and we didn't really have rules for anything. Nothing was really established in the way that it is now. So I remember that by this time, Twitter was already available for everyone. So I made myself a Twitter account, and at the time it was very much like, I don't want to say role play, because it wasn't role play, but it was like you were not yourself. You were kind of pretending to be a character in the books. It's different from the role play community, but it's just the way that Twitter was kind of working at the time. It's different. And I thought it was too much. It was too much for me. I was barely able to speak in English at all at the time. So I was confused. I was overwhelmed, and I was like, this is not for me. Thank you very much. I'm gonna go. And then I somehow found myself on Tumblr. I think it was through Facebook. Somebody shared something from Tumblr, from the Harry Potter fandom. And then I was like, okay, what is that? So I ended up on Tumblr, which is it was such a weird place to be in the 2010s. But I think it also helped a lot of us build our identities. But I found myself in Tumblr, and it was a lot easier to interact with that, because I didn't need to have an identity there. I could just reblog photos, and I could be quiet, and I could just be observant, and I didn't need to interact. But then one thing led to another. And at the time, there was this new boy band that was just coming up, and that they were about to release their first single, and the boy band was One Direction, and they were about to release What Makes You Beautiful. So I found them a couple of days before that, and I was obsessed with them. I have been obsessed ever since, but I don't know what it was about them. It was just I don't know what it was. I wish I could explain it. But yeah, I suddenly found myself in the One Direction fandom. And at the time, it was mainly in English because they were coming from Britain. So that's where they were most popular. And then slowly they started gaining popularity all over the world, including Mexico. And I started hearing other people talk about them. But there was this culture in fandom of being very secretive about things. Tumblr itself was very much like, oh, we're different. We're not like everyone else. We're like the misfits. This is where we hang out. And that kind of gives you a sense of belonging. So I started hearing other people getting interested in One Direction. And I was like, no, you can't. I wanted to gatekeep them so bad, but I couldn't. They were too big for me anyway. So it was kind of like I needed to adapt. And One Direction themselves, the members, were not on Tumblr, they were on Twitter. So I had to go back to Twitter if I wanted to get a chance at getting a follow or a reply. So I found myself in Twitter again. And I was still very young. I was around 14, 15 at the time, maybe younger. And I had this rejection for the Latin American side of it. And at the time I didn't realize, but it was very much rooted in racism and xenophobia from other parts of the world. And they were like, oh no, the Latin American side is like cringy, it's weird, it's all of these things. And at the time it was very easy to get caught up in it and be like, yeah, they are so weird, could not be me. I'm here speaking in English, you don't need to know anything else about me. And for this reason, I also felt very alien and very much outside of it. Not only was I younger than most of the people, I was also not a native English speaker, and I didn't share their culture or their customs or their countries or anything with them. I had nothing to do with them. So in this time, I just managed to do one friend that to this day, she's very close to me, but she's also Mexican. And somehow we found ourselves in that sea of people. But it still felt very weird. It felt like it was just us against the world. And it was not the sense of community that I have now. I remember also going to see the One Direction movie when it came out, and I went alone, and that was very weird as well, because it was like, yes, this is the people that I love that I'm seeing, and it's just so foreign to me, which is a very different experience that from what I'm living now as an army. But that being said, I was still very much on Tumblr and very much on Twitter. So I felt weird and I felt like I didn't belong there. And then in real life, it was also frowned upon to be a fangirl. You know, when you're so young and you're trying to create your identity, you're just trying to fit in. You're just trying to go under the radar. In my case, I didn't really want to stand out. I just wanted to be like as low-key as possible. So I didn't share anything at all. So I couldn't share it in real life. I couldn't share it online that much. It was a very solitary experience at the time. But then I was still very much involved in Harry Potter. And then Emma Watson started really being more open about feminism. And she's the first mainstream celebrity I remember being involved in feminism. And then I was like, okay, that is certainly a concept that sounds interesting. And then we were also in the time, I'm also very much a reader, and I was sort of involved in other book fandoms. And there was the craze of the dystopias and strong women in dystopias. So the most notable being Katniss Everdeen. So we had like Emma Watson, whom I idolized at the time, and then all of these women from fictional stories that were also like reclaiming their spaces. And although now it seems like too little and we dismiss it very much as just white feminism from the US, at the time it hadn't been done before in such a mainstream way. So it was very much new, and it was, you know, being so young and so impressionable, it was like, yeah, this is like revolutionary to me. So that kind of made me go more into the feminist side of things that I wasn't aware, and otherwise I would have never gone into, because I wouldn't have had a pathway to it. And then I grew up, I stopped liking One Direction as much, I kind of strayed away from those interests, and I found myself in the RuPaul's Drag Race fandom. I was very much a fan of Drag Race, and on this side there was, yes, it's fun and it's like very flashy and very interesting, but I'm not the kind of person who will just take things at face value. I do like to learn more about the background of things. So when I was interested in this, I also inevitably started learning about queer culture, and not only about queer pop culture, which was important to understand the reference in the show, but also about queer history. And with queer history, first you kind of go into the US, and then I started learning about queer history in my own country. And those are kinds of things that I wouldn't have that would have never touched my life if I was not in those specific fandoms in those specific times. So I could have gone my entire life without knowing any of these things exist, but it was fandom spaces because there's always somebody that knows more than you do. And sometimes they use it for bad, but in my experience, more often than not, people are willing to share what they know. So there was this like sort of, I still didn't feel like I belonged in any of those, but it was certainly something that helped me shape who I am now. And then that leads me to my current fandom, which is, I would say K-pop in general, but also much more specifically ARMY. And when I personally became a K-pop fan, and I think it happens to a lot of us, I received very negative responses from the people around me. They thought I was too old because when I got into K-pop, I was 20, I think. I was in university, and I was apparently too old for that. And it's too foreign, it's too weird, it's too flashy, it's a bad industry, it's all of these things. And then you obviously start to notice that these things are coming from a place of racism and xenophobia, and it's not okay. But you're also like, I'm just learning about it. I just like seeing these men dance. Like, why are you making me confront all of these things? But in that turn, you also need to confront your own prejudices or things that you don't know. You need to learn about it so you can defend it, right? So in that sense, I think being a Western K-pop fan, you cannot escape the political side of it because you need to be involved in it. Otherwise, you're just being a mindless consumer of it. And that is also, I mean, to each their own. But in my case, that's not something I want to do. I don't want to just consume and take and take and take without giving at least a little bit of support in return, right? So yeah, becoming a K-pop fan kind of made me confront and understand racism in ways that have never touched my life either. So also with all of this, and where I wanted to go with all of this was saying that the fandoms that I've been involved in have given me my political identities, and this has happened because media functions within society. We cannot escape it. We all live in a society, sadly, and prejudices and I'll just say prejudices exist in real life, and they are reflected in the media we consume. And that's why it's so important that you consume it critically so that you can actually separate yourself and be like, okay, I don't like what is going on here, or I do like what is happening here. I want to learn more, or I want to understand it, or I want to actually know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about this thing. So fandom in a way can help you get more familiar in a much nicer way with politics. It's not nicer as in less important, but it can be the pathway that can take you to learn about these heavier topics, and that's how you can relate it, and that's how it touches your life. And now going back a little bit to feeling like I didn't belong in fandom spaces, and when people started telling me that I was too old for it, and that it was like kind of like my time was over to enjoy things. Like, you cannot enjoy anything anymore, you are a grown woman, stop it. But this is the most at home I've ever felt in my fandom spaces. Not necessarily as a whole, like there's too many armies for me to be like, all of them are my friends and all of them are my family. I couldn't do that, I don't know them. But this time I already know who I am, I already know what I stand for, I already know what I like and what I don't like. And in this way I can actually reach out to people and have something to say. And this is what has led me to create friendships that have turned into family. And this is what has allowed me to create a space like Casi Cielo, where we kind of try to shine a light on fangirls beyond screaming women. We also try to say, like, yeah, that is a part of us, definitely. We scream and we cry and we do all of those things. But we can also hold the panel, and we can also have other kinds of interests, and we also know a lot of things. And I wouldn't have been able to do this when I was a child. When I was 13 years old, there was no way for me to do this because I still had a lot to learn, and I still have a lot to learn now. But yeah, for me, fandom spaces have been about finding community and finding belonging, and all of these things in turn have shaped me. And with that, what I can only hope to do is that I can also give a little bit of that back and create safe spaces where other people can find the same kind of strengths that I have. And that's all I have to say.
I'm gonna continue a little bit in the same line as what Gary is mentioning. In my case, my relationship with fandom, I think it has always been very emotional, and I have always considered myself an intense person and a very passionate person. So whenever I like something, I tend to like it a lot ever since I was a little kid. And I would say that I first personally encountered fandom in my elementary school years when the Jonas Brothers became a thing. It was kind of similar to what Gali mentioned. We're kind of like from the same generation, so we started with the Jonas Brothers. And I still remember clearly the day in which I got like my first Jonas Brothers album, which was actually my first album ever, and how I started listening to it on repeat on my MP3 player. And I was so excited about it. And to me, it's one of like the most valuable memories that I hold from my childhood. And actually, it was one of the first times that I remember fondly in this idea of like being a fan. That would be like the first time. Um, However, I would also say that I kind of organically learned what being a fan was all about because of my mom. My mom, she is a huge Lord of the Rings fan, and she has always liked it a lot. So ever since I was a kid, she would play all the movies and she would dress up as the characters and all of this. So she was like my first reference, and because of her, I think that I learned that being a fan was something that you do not need to feel ashamed of. But later on, when I was in school, I got confronted with that idea because in my home, like at the house, it was great, but outside, people were actually criticizing you or looking down on you for liking something way too much, especially when you're a woman. As Gina already mentioned, it's something that happens to us more than it happens to the boys. And later on, after the Jonas Brothers, I think that I started getting a lot into like the book sagas fandoms. So I was also part of the vampire hype that Twilight brought back in 2008. And I think that it was because of Twilight and because of the R.L. Stein's collection of Goosebumps, which I still love, that I started reading when I was a kid. And you can say whatever maybe you like Twilight or you hate Twilight, and I wouldn't care. But the fact that it brought a lot of people closer to reading, like Harry Potter also did, I think it is very important. And it was that that made me want to like become an avid reader. So I also think that I have to like be thankful of it because of the person that I am now. And then during my high school years, just like Garia mentioned, I found myself in the weird reality that Tumblr was. That platform was like very unique, like in the sense that you could find a lot of different communities that shared everything they liked without feeling ashamed of it. And I even remember this post, this very famous post that said something along the lines of Facebook people know you in real life, but they do not know you personally. Tumblr people do not know you in real life, but they know everything about you. And I felt very related to that because it was true. Like a lot of people from school did not know what I liked, what I didn't like. They didn't know me as a person. They just knew me from school, you know, I was just a girl. But there was this whole community online that resonated with the same things that I resonated with, and that liked the same things that I liked. And it was because of Tumblr that I discovered the musical theater fandom, which I would say it was for me something that shaped the person that I am now. Musical shows like Wicked and Les Mis, and later on Hamilton. I think that they really shaped me personally. First of, because I would say that they have a lot of political commentary, and as Gary also mentioned, that when you start to receive all of these ideas from the media you consume, you start forming your own ideas, your own opinion about certain things, and you start taking certain stances, I would say. Um, and for instance, like Enjolras and Marius are both young men that denounce social injustice and that are willing to sacrifice their lives for what they believe in. And Hamilton, at least in the show, because I don't want to talk about the political figure it's based on. I know there's a lot of controversy around that, but as a character, is a person with clear moral values and someone who actually inspired me to never give up on my writing. I think that also has to do a lot with who Lin-Manuel Miranda is as a person. But that is also something that I resonated a lot with. And Angelica and Eliza are also very strong female characters, and they have clear convictions. And that is also something that Elphaba has in Wicked, both in the show. But I would say that especially in the book, she's constantly criticizing the way that animals are treated. And that is kind of like an analogy on our own society's way of discriminating against certain people based on economic status or their origins or their race, so to speak. And later on, it was because of shows like, or through shows as Spring Awakening and Dear Evan Hansen, that I learned a lot about mental health issues, and I started to feel less alone. In a way, I found comfort in those shows because I felt less like a weirdo and more as someone that needed help and needed to go to therapy. So that was also a way in which I think that the musical theater fandom and the community helped me personally. And now I believe that being a fan is a way in which like we can challenge ourselves, our beliefs, and what we would consider our limitations. And I like to point out K-pop in that regard. I think it's a very good example of it because, as the girls have already mentioned, when I got into K-pop, I had to confront a lot of ideas that people around me had and that I personally had about the Korean society or Asian culture. And I think it got me closer to the Eastern media because there's a lot of media, Western media concentration in Mexico. We're very close to the United States. So I'm actually now living in Germany now. And I realized, I thought that it was like a Western phenomenon in which like all of the countries were very Americanized. And even though it is true, there's a lot of Americanization in different countries, I would say that living here has taught me that Mexico specifically is more Americanized than other Western countries. So yeah, to me, like being open to this culture, to the Korean culture, learning a little bit more about how they are, also their language, because I wanted to understand the BTS lyrics, really showed me that there was so much more out there, and that we have a lot of prejudice towards their culture. And it also personally helped me to become a more, I don't know how to say it, but like a more gentle person with myself. I still think that I'm battling a lot with myself. I have a lot of issues, but liking BTS has made me more critical of the way that I think about myself and what I say to myself, how it can impact myself. And I think that having like this kind of like activities like the Army Selka Day, for instance, and seeing the clothes that the idols are wearing and trying to replicate that, and taking pictures of myself, even though I can feel uncomfortable from time to time, it has really helped me boost a little bit my self-esteem, because in the past I would have never done that. I actually never did it. I did not like to take pictures of myself. I hated it. And now I'm starting to like find a little bit more of comfort in doing that and trying to wear clothes that I never thought that I could wear. And that to me is also trying to like go beyond the limitations that I thought that I had. And finally, I would say that it also helped me to make friends, which to me has been very important because of BTS and because of the K-pop community. I have found a lot of people that are very close to my heart, and I never thought that I would have done that because I am a very shy person, and sometimes I'm socially awkward. So to me, this fandom has helped me build solid relationships. And I always find inspiration not just from the K-pop idols, but also from the people around me and the army community. And I couldn't finish this without mentioning Casi Cielo, of course, because the team, the girls, have not only helped me personally, but I would say that also professionally as well. Like Aria mentioned, like we are fangirls, but we're also now holding a panel now. So yeah, I would say that all of that has helped me build the identity that I now have, and that speaks volumes to how important cherishing your fangirl side or your fanboy side or your fan side is to your person, to you as a person, and we need to embrace it more often.
Okay, with that, we conclude the second part of the panel. We're going to start with the third part, separating your personhood from the media you consume. I'm going to give the word again to Gabriel.
Yes, when we were choosing when we were kind of practicing what we were going to say, we chose that I would be the first one to talk because I have an example that I want to get back from what I already said from Harry Potter. So separating your personhood from the media you consume, we already talked a little bit about it. Like you need to be able to take a step back so that you can actually analyze what is going on. And for the most part, you can kind of solve it. It's like, okay, this person messed up, whatever. No, let's move on. But it has happened sometimes that creators themselves can be bigots and creators can be actively harming other people. In specific, I want to talk about Harry Potter and J.K. Rowling because I think that is one of the most mainstream and kind of big examples of when I personally needed to take a step back and reevaluate, like, what am I doing? Who am I supporting? And what is this person doing with the money that I'm giving them? So when J.K. Rowling kind of started gaining traction as a turf, what is the term? When she first started getting traction for her transphobia, I was in the middle of collecting a new Harry Potter collection that was coming out, the illustrated books, and I was like, I was still very much a fan of Harry Potter, and I was like, okay, what is going on? What is this woman talking about? Like, what is she doing? And for the most part, when somebody starts saying these kinds of things, they kind of get a calling out online, and they backtrack and they say like, oh, I'm so sorry, I have learned from my mistakes. She didn't. She kept going and she kept going and she kept going, and every time it kept getting worse. So in that time, I had to take a step back and I had to think to myself, like, what am I doing? Like, I cannot keep giving this woman more money because what is she funding with it? And I don't know about her political connections or how powerful she actually is. But somebody with that much money, that I think she was the first person to become millionaire from books, somebody with that much money has a lot of power as well. So what I'm doing when I'm supporting her financially is that I'm also indirectly funding these campaigns that go against everything that I believe in and that are actively harming somebody else's human rights. So in that moment, it's beyond canceling somebody. It's not about Twitter, and it's not about how much harm I can do with one tweet. It's about putting your money where your mouth is and saying like, this is, no matter how much I love this and no matter how much it has shaped me, I can no longer engage with this because this is hurting people that I don't want to hurt. So in that case, you kind of have to be very clear about who you are as a person before you are a fan. I think your political identity is a lot more important of your fan identity, because politics are real and they are actually affecting people. And somebody in the chat I saw was saying that art or creations is never just natural, it's always political, and it's true. And that is, I think it's partly because of the themes that are addressed in the works, but also because the person creating them is a person who also has political identity. So you have to make sure that they are aligning with you. And yeah, I just wanted to mention that because I think that's important as well, to yes, you can be very much a fan and you can scream and you can shout and you can cry, but who are you to your core and what are you supporting? And with this being said, and since we are in an army event, I also want to talk about the other side of the coin, what actually happens when people learn from their mistakes. And when you commit an honest mistake, there is a difference between being a bigot and between being uninformed about a topic or messing up because you're young or whatever. But with BTS, they have had their fair share of controversy throughout the years, but it has never been repeated, which I think is where the difference lies. And when you can learn from the things that you have done, that is showing that you care about the people around you. So for this reason, I have more than once had to take a step back and be like, okay, something is happening. What is it? How is it being addressed? What are we going to do about it moving forward? And at least with BTS, it has always been a positive outcome as far as I'm concerned. My values and my morals have always fell in line with what they are doing and what they are preaching. So for this reason, I am able to continue supporting them. If one day they do something that does not align with my political views, then I will have to take a step back and say, I'm so sorry. I adore everything you do, but this is not right for me. Right now, it hasn't happened. I hope it never happens because I do love them very much. But it's something that you have to be willing to do. It's something that you need to be aware of, that these are people, these are real human beings, and they may mess up, and messing up is okay. But what do you do with that mistake? And that is also a problem that I have seen that has been gaining more and more traction in several fandoms, not just ours, but in all fandoms, that people are sweeping things under the rug and things are not being addressed. And while I understand the reason, I understand why fans are so protective of their artists, especially idols. They already receive enough hate as it is. And we as fans also receive enough harassment as it is. So if they start messing up and we start making a big deal out of it, it just becomes worse. But we have to put those things aside. We have to distinguish when something is just to mess with us and just to make us feel bad, and where something is actually wrong and when we actually need to talk about something. And yeah, just to end that, I think the most important thing is that we also always need to keep in mind as fans that the question of, does this thing that I support align with the world I'm trying to create? And if it does, then you can go ahead and continue being a fan of it. And if it doesn't, then it's up to you to kind of decide what to do. But I think we should always keep in mind that we are people who are also trying to create a better world, and that what we support is actively generating a change. So it's important for us to be like very clear of where we stand.
Yeah, I want to continue on what Karia is saying. So I actually believe that the statement separating your personhood from the media you consume on its own is not only like very powerful, but very, very important to keep in mind. And I know that probably the people that are watching us right now already do that, but because of that, I do want to say that it's important that we replicate that message with other people that may not be as critical, so that we can actually create a change and that it has an impact. I want to talk about a situation that happened to me a couple of days ago, and that to me is a good example of how you can start questioning yourself and the media you consume. So I was talking to this friend of mine. She does not know anything about K-pop. And I told her that I really liked K-pop and that I wanted to go to Korea. And the first thing that she said was something like, I have heard that their culture is very misogynistic and that they exploit their idols. And first of all, it's not that I'm going to defend those allegations, because yeah, it could be true in certain scenarios, but I also knew that it came from like a very inner racism that she has, and I was a little bit offended by that because I thought, well, if I were talking about a boy band that comes from the UK, you would not have said that if this was something that was like a Western media product, you know, or if it was just white people, you know, she wouldn't have responded in that way. But I was like very careful in the way that I tried to address her question because I didn't want to fight. I actually wanted to like defend the fact that we can be fans of something and that we can also be critical of it. So my response was something like, yeah, I'm aware of the negative and the positive sides of the Korean society. But liking a country's culture does not mean that I'm incapable of recognizing the values that I personally do not share. And that happens to anything. Like it could be a culture, but it could also be a media product or a K-pop group or an artist, whatever. And because of that, I think that she actually started seeing me as someone that was actually critical and that recognized that, but that was also that even though I knew that there were these aspects that did not align with what my personal values, I also um, I also like certain aspects of the culture, you know, and I'm gonna back them, you know. I'm still going to like it, and I'm still going to support the K-pop music genre, you know. So that I wanted to mention that because I want to talk about a very important concept that I want to introduce you to, and that's media literacy. And I don't know if you have heard of this concept, but it is basically the idea, well, no, not just the idea, the ability to access, analyze, evaluate, and create media in a variety of forms. And I think that that understanding this is actually the first thing that we need to be aware of before we actually start consuming something, whatever that is, if it's a culture, if it's a media piece, whatever. This is specifically talking about media, but you know, whatever we like, we can start talking about being literate of what we're consuming. And so being media literate does not mean that we have to have everything we consume under a microscope, not necessarily. But it does mean that we need to ask ourselves some questions that are very important to ask. So these questions are, what is a media product or whatever we are consuming? What is the message they are trying to give us? Who is behind this message? What is the purpose of this message? And do I agree or disagree with it, and why? I think that asking ourselves these different questions is a basis of everything and could actually start forming our own critical thinking. And that doesn't mean that we no longer like something. It just means that we are aware of the good side, the bad side, the ugly side, and we no longer blindly defend something or we blindly hate it, because that could also happen. You know, there's people that blindly defend something or blindly hate it, and they are not capable of recognizing that there's not a black or a white opinion. There's a lot of nuances that happen in between. There's a big gray area. And recognizing that there's these nuances, and I would say that that in that lies the best analysis of our own media, of our media consumption, and that is clearly very, very important. So if you want to know a little bit more about media literacy, UNESCO actually has its own website that's called MIL, so you can check the concept. MIL stands for Media and Information Literacy, and you can find it online. And they have a whole website that talks about how important media literacy is. And I would say that you can either look for that, or you can just start just asking these questions that I just mentioned to whatever it is that you're consuming. And that is where you can start recognizing, okay, well, I like this, and I'm going to support it, even though there has been like certain things that I have not necessarily agree with. Like, for instance, bringing this into the concrete example that Gabriel was giving with the whole BTS thing. So yeah, there has been certain things that they have done in the past which probably did not align with our own personal values. But we are, I think that we, as a fandom, maybe, I don't know if most of us or some of us, but the people that I know that are part of the army community and that are still following them are able of recognizing, okay, this was not okay, but they did something about it, but they addressed it. And I am able to keep supporting them because I know that, as Gaia mentioned, they are just human beings. We are all capable of committing a mistake. It could happen to all of us. But they knew how to deal with it in the best way they could. And that does align with our values. We have this value of, okay, we can mess up, but we recognize that and we do something about it. Okay, that aligns with my values. I can keep supporting them. But what happens if there's something else that we do not support? Okay, we can go through again this process of thinking about it and then deciding, okay, maybe I'm going to take a step back and I'm not going to support this anymore. And it could be applied to a media product specifically, maybe not an artist or a person. Maybe you don't like certain album or certain book or some certain something from someone, and it does not mean that you're instantly going to take a step back from a whole person's career. Or, like it can vary a lot from situation to situation. But summarizing, I would just say that being able to just ask the questions is very important. And even though the process is very personal and no one has to like necessarily put like their finger on you, it does not have to be like that, but it can be like a very personal, how can I say this, like it's a personal reflection. And that's it. That to me would be the most important aspect of learning how to separate our own personhood from the media we consume.
On that note, I think another example we could use that it is very interesting and very recent is the fact that I don't remember when. I think it was Wednesday. That there was the Hive annual meeting, something, I don't know what it's called exactly,
Community briefing.
yeah, community briefing. They announced that they would be selling, working, making NFTs, which are non-fungible tokens. Gina made a post in Casi Cielo regarding NFTs, which is very interesting. And a lot of people were very critical about it, and I was honestly very impressed and very proud of us as a community, as a fandom, as Army, because while a lot of people were thinking that it could affect, BTS and their image and them as people, I believe that when you have a band, as a company, as Hive, when you have a band and you make them stand for certain things, go to the UN and, push this message about the goals for the future, reducing the carbon footprint and etc. It's very contradicting that you start selling NFTs because they're harmful to the environment. And I was really proud of us for standing up for this, for creating a hashtag and everything, because as consumers, I believe that the power we have, if anything, is to stop consuming. A lot of people, Korean armies, I think, were canceling their orders for the seasons that 2022 season's greetings. And I thought that was very interesting. A lot of people had a lot of opinions, obviously. But I think that if there's one way we can use our power is that, saying, expressing that we're against that. Um, it is terrible that a lot of people were canceling their orders because the boys did work hard on that. I trust that. I trust they did. But at the end of the day, BTS have always talked about their music and being musicians and creating music. So I believe that it doesn't go straight to BTS. It's a critic. It's una crítica.
A criticism?
Yeah, it's criticism against what the company was presenting them as, and then what they're doing with that other thing. Of course, it's harmless. Of course, it harms them. It harms their image because it contradicts a lot of things. So it puts them in a very hard place, and it puts us too in a very hard place because there's obviously always this thought that, yeah, I like them, but I don't want them to think that just because of this one thing, I hate them as a band or as people, or they don't represent what they always did to me. But it's just, pointing this thing out that we're against. And I think that is very valid. That is extremely healthy as well, that we are able to recognize that. And also regarding what Gary mentioned about, we look up to people that can be on top of the world. They can be in the biggest band in the world, the biggest act, but they're still people and they still make mistakes like we all do. We don't have a spotlight on us, thankfully. And those mistakes sometimes, most of the times, go unnoticed by the general public. But when you're up there, it is very hard that one of your mistakes goes unnoticed. So I think it is very important to know that also giving them the benefit of the doubt and letting them, work past those mistakes, learn from them, also allows us to, see that they're actually human. Because when we don't let the people that we admire make a mistake, we also deprive them of a very important part of their humanity, which is growth as people. So I think it is very important to know that, yes, BTS have made mistakes in the past, but they're also, they've also addressed them. As Kari mentioned, that's very important to me. I think it's very important for all of us here. And it's something that we value a lot because it shows who they are as people. And ultimately, that's what brings us together, the fact that we're all people and we will all make mistakes. But there's always room to grow. And we should take that space.
Yes, it's very important. And I want to sort of pick up a few things that all of you have said previously, especially, for example, what Danny said of nuances. I think that's a very important word because a lot of things that happen are really contextual. And I think this part of critical thinking has made me realize that, what we were also mentioning, like the world is not black and white. And there's a lot of things that happen where we have to take a step back and consider a lot of sides and opinions. And, yeah, it's complicated. And I think that also leads me to the fact, well, what I wanted to address right now, which is that, fandom spaces, at least, well, for me, they have allowed me to develop in many ways. They were the virtual spaces where I started writing, which fostered my love for music and literature. I've met some of my very best friends, right? And they also spaces that made me start thinking critically, especially because, there is constantly dialogue and interaction within a community. And it is only logical that this happens because, if you bring a group of people together because of their enjoyment for a same thing, then, well, you will start talking. And sometimes that talk evolves more than just, okay, I like this thing. It also evolves into, those intersections of politics or values and moral stances, whatever you would like to call them. And, that generates also this facet of fandom that we have I'm sure all of us encountered of like what discourses go on in fandom, right? Um, and I think that's something that flowers, especially right now with online communities, because it's very easy for us to, speak out on things we agree with, we disagree with, or we want to be critical about, or even our mindless thoughts. That's part of what goes on in fandom discourse too. But I think that's something that has been very important for me to learn, especially, going again into fandom spaces, because I think I was a little distant from them for a few years before going back to like, actually having like a fan account, right? Or using my own account rather, because I don't really have a fan account. It's just my account, just talking about fandom. But going back to that side after a few years of like, oh no, I'm too cool for fandom, those prejudices that I once again come to that topic of that expectations. You are not supposed to go into fandoms if you're a grown person, right? Going back into fandom, it was very important for me to, being able to distinguish those nuances in discourse, and especially between, healthy discussion and this part of constructive criticism, and what was outright hateful or offensive discourse, just really harmful stuff. And yeah, so when I was younger, I think that I got really carried away by, if someone criticized or said like, I dislike this thing that you like. I remember I was really, for example, into 5 Seconds of Summer. They were like my equivalent of One Direction or the Jonas Brothers as a boy band, right? And I remember that I was active on Twitter at the time, like 2014, right? I was like 14 years old actually. And I got really carried away by, some things that were actually pointless. Like if someone said like, oh, I didn't like this song, and everyone started going after them, like, why don't you like it? Are you saying that you hate them? Or, just, yeah, online spaces are very easy to, being misinterpreted, because discourse can get out of hand when you're in the internet. You don't have any verbal or physical cues as we have like right now. You can see what our reactions are, what our intentions are, and words are easily misinterpreted. That's just the nature of written language, and especially so casual as it can be on social media. But I think then it is very important to distinguish what is just a constructive criticism or just criticism without an intention to offend or to be harmful towards an artist you like or just a piece of media that you like, and what is actually hateful or offensive discourse, and not just coming from like external people but also coming from us. Like at what point are we criticizing constructively, and at what point are we being hateful towards even not even like artists that we don't like or media that we criticize, but also to like people within the communities now, right? And in fandom. And so yeah, that has been a thing that I think is very important to, as you were saying, be critical of the media we consume, to know our personal values and ideological stances, and know them so well that we can distinguish nuances and construct dialogue. And that is very different from just engaging in unfounded hate or towards something or someone just because we don't agree with it or we don't like it. And I think it was very visible as you were also taking this example of what Gali was mentioning of the whole NFT discussion that went on earlier this week. Like some people were saying, like, I remember seeing on my Twitter timeline, they were saying, well, you don't like BTS anymore because you're criticizing that. And it's like, no, I'm being critical of like a decision that was probably not even made by them, right? They probably didn't have any say in that. I'm criticizing the company behind that, like the corporate thing that is behind that. I love BTS, I love their music, but it was a very different thing. And I think it is also very different. For example, another example that came to my mind while thinking about this topic of what is criticism and what is hate. I think, for example, taking also BTS as an example, this whole situation that happened a few months ago with that radio host that was just outright racist and xenophobic, and with reason, like people responded and said like, hey, you're being an asshole because you're not saying like, oh, you're not commenting on the quality of their music, you're not commenting on the quality of their work, or on any aspect that would actually involve their artistry. You're being hateful towards them. And what for? Because they're Korean, you know, because you don't like girls liking BTS, you know, all these things that we have mentioned that go into the conversation of um, women in fandom and fandom spaces and um, non-Western artists. But I think, yeah, that was a very appropriate response from people. Like, you're being hateful, you're promoting hate discourse, hate speech. So yeah, that's just something else. Like, we shouldn't allow that, definitely, because it doesn't align with any of the values that most of us hold, right? And it is something that is actively harming someone else. And I think that is very different from, like, I don't know, if there's like a review on a magazine. Like, I'm not putting in a specific example right now. Like, I took the other one because it was a very known side of the coin that we knew. But like, if someone, I don't know, wrote a piece on like the last BTS release, which was, I don't know, Permission to Dance, I don't know, and said like, oh, well, I think this is not their best work because of these reasons, right? For example, I think that is very different from that other comment that was just hateful for no reason. And I can just ignore if I don't like reading that stuff that is criticizing something I love, because I know that sometimes it can be kind of weird, a feeling to, you know, read that someone else doesn't like the things that you love, because it can be very close to you, and you sometimes just don't get how other people don't like it. But that's something that I can just refrain from reading, and that is not really affecting anyone. That is just like, I don't know, a 3-star review on a magazine. But that was just very, very far away from the other thing, right? So I think that has been something that has saved me a lot of, you know, bad times on not only on social media, but in general in fandom life. Now that I think I've become more active in it again, and yeah, so basically just, you know, distinguishing the nuances and assessing with our values again, you know, just always um, going back to what we stand for, what we believe. And I think, you know, also just a little adding on to this, I think it is this is not us like saying just don't relate any of your personhood to like the things you like or the things you consume, because of course we are proud of like the things we like and the things we love, and that also makes our identity. But sometimes, you know, it is not all of our identity. Like, me liking BTS is not all of my identity, but it is part of it, and it has brought like great things to my identity. But if I need to take a step back, um it is also great to do so, and it is healthy, and it is, yeah, I think it is good to have that sense of like, yeah, um I am shaped by this, but it is not the only thing that constitutes me as a person. And that thing, I think, has made my life so much easier, and has saved me a lot of trouble and a lot of crises. Like, you know, sometimes you get so invested in stuff that maybe is not even worth your time, um, especially going into fandom, because I think you can get very carried away in fandom by passion, and that's great. Sometimes it's not great other times. So yeah, I think that's my stance on it.
I just want to make a quick comment on what you just said, Gina, because I think we all relate to it a lot. But in the sense of like reading online criticism towards, I don't know, BTS. Maybe someone does not like a song from BTS or something. I think that people are, or most armies are like very quick to like respond in a very protective way, and I get it, because uh, I believe that as fans, especially as people that are as women and as people from the LGBTQ community, like there is so much criticism towards us as people, and people just like pointing their fingers towards us and what we like. That we are almost we have like developed like this shell to protect ourselves from all of this. And I think that um, I understand why it happens, like this reaction of like, no, I want to defend my artists. I want to defend what they are doing because it's not fair. And sometimes it is not fair, because yeah, there's history on that. But also, I think that because of that, sometimes we have like this very organic reaction, and we forget that maybe what we are reading or what we're seeing is not necessarily like a bad criticism, or something that it's ill intended. Maybe it's a positive criticism, or maybe it's not very positive, but it's not necessarily negative, and we're taking it in a very visceral way. And I think we need to start changing that, because even though I do understand where it comes from, I also believe that through criticism, BTS has grown a lot as artists. They have grown a lot, and criticism is very important for artists to keep on growing, and for human beings in general. Because if no one tells you when you're messing up, then you're gonna keep on messing up. So I would say that to me, that has been like something that I like to read sometimes, and not just with BTS, but in general. I want to see what people are saying that maybe I personally do not agree with it, but I want to know it, and then I want to understand where that opinion is coming from. Yeah, so I just wanted to comment on that specifically. I don't know what you want to add, Kari.
Yeah, basically that fandom is very reactionary, and I think we have all been guilty of it at some point, but it's up to us to decide what we do with that reaction. But also in the chat, and I think Gali and Ginny were mentioning separating the artist from the company, which is also an interesting position to be in, especially in K-pop, where it's more evident, because it's not like Western artists don't have companies behind them. But in K-pop, it's a lot more evident, to the point where we have the big three, which could now be considered the big four, or being kind of monopolized by hype. And that's also important to have a notion of that. And as we have mentioned many times, we are now grown-ups. We have been in fandom many years, but this is the first time we're like adults in it. So it's also up to us to see things for what they are. Because when you're young and it's your first experience with finding something that you love this much, it's easy to kind of fall for everything. You think everything is right, and the company is always right, and the artist is, it's you just don't understand the world in the same way as when you're more of a grown-up. And not because children or teenagers are not capable of being smart, but because they haven't had the time to learn certain things. And then it's also up to us to separate those things and be like, okay, I might not agree with this, but who is it coming from and what can I do about it? For example, with the NFT things, I'm not going to blame BTS. I would love to be a fly on the wall in their briefings with that company. I would love to know what's going on, but I'm not. I don't know what they think about it, but I know what I think about it. I know companies are out to make money, right? So I'm not going to blame them because I don't know what they think about it. I hope they're not like on it, but that's not up to me, and that is not something that I know for sure. So all I can do is be like, okay, I don't agree with this. I'm not going to buy it. I'm not going to support that. I'm not going to give my money to it. Like I said before, it's put your money where your mouth is. And yeah, I also wanted to touch on that once we become adults in fandom spaces, we're also a lot more responsible of how we react and of how we interact with these kinds of spaces, because it's a different experience.
Yeah, I believe that specifically that last part you said, as an adult, we can all be a target. We can all be a target on Twitter, depending on whatever we say. For example, I use Twitter, for example, because it's the easiest way to engage in conversation. We can all be a target, but I was just talking about this to a friend, that we choose what we say, we choose what goes out into the world. So as adults, I think that it is very important to know that anything you say can be taken out of context, but most importantly, there are certain things that, even it'd be best not to save them, because it can begin it can start problems, it can start an issue, and when you close Twitter, that's it. When you shut them off, then there's no conversation anymore. But as adults, I think that it is very important that, us grown-ups do know that there are certain things that we can say. There are other things that we can say but will spark something, um, and create issues. Nobody wants to get certain threats on Twitter. Nobody wants to have issues. That's always very uncomfortable for everyone, the people you follow, the people that follow you. So, yeah, I think it's very important to point out that as we grow older, we do have a certain responsibility in the way we engage with certain things. I'm not going to start um, an argument with a person that I know is 4 years younger than me, that's 17, that's 16, simply because we see the world in different ways. And I gotta be the bigger person, because I am the bigger person. I am the older person, and I do have like a clear understanding, much more clear understanding of what could happen if we say certain things or do certain things. So, it's also good to be aware of that we can not partake in controversy. We can choose not to, and that is great. There's group chats for that, for certain opinions. I know we do have our opinions, but we keep them to ourselves, because not everybody needs to know, number one. And number two, there's no point in engaging in fights with people you don't know and will never know. So that's also very important to mention.
Yeah, and I think that ultimately, I mean, it sounds like we were saying like very serious stuff, but I think it is also for our own peace of mind and our own enjoyment of the thing. Like, especially we're talking fandom right now, so like fandom pieces. Because we all like to lose our minds and to be like very excited about stuff, and we're not saying like don't do that, over rationalize everything you see and say and consume, but it is also like things that I think for us have helped us to enjoy them in different ways, and in ways that where we feel a lot more, yeah, peace of mind with what we are doing, with what we're saying, with what we're consuming. Like, I think we've even had these moments where we've talked about like, you know what, sometimes you can just like unfollow someone, right, and just not see that anymore, and that brings a lot of enjoyment to my a lot more security or enjoyment to like my experience in the fandom. And so yeah, I think it is also this part of the mechanisms and the strategies to live a fandom life that is much more fulfilling. Because yeah, as I said, like when I was really young and barely getting into this, uh yeah, what you were mentioning, like it can be very reactionary, it can carry you away a lot, and it ultimately ends up giving nothing back to you, right? It's more harmful than anything. And I think that these are things that, as well, we have been for a few years in the fandom, and there's people that have been even longer in fandoms than we have been in. And I think that these are things that are very important to also enjoy, that part of um, being a fan of something that is mere excitement and pure joy, and all those positive things of that experience. So yeah.
Anyone has anything more to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what Gina said, that it's not just about fandom, it's about like social media in general. Sometimes just like taking a break from social media, it's very important. Yeah, especially in fandom, of course. Like, it happened to me a couple of months ago. There was like this big controversy around someone that I supported, and I needed to take a break because there was like a lot of people commenting and a lot of noise. And to be honest, I was feeling very overwhelmed about the whole situation, and I just needed to take a break. And I took like a 2-week break or something, and it helped me so much. I was at peace with my thoughts. I could make up my own mind. I could process the information personally, because there's also like this very big difference between processing whatever, like media pieces or information or something, with a lot of people, because you start receiving their opinions like live, and then processing it on your own. And I would say that it could also be applied to, like, for instance, listening an album. I would recommend to do it, to have the two experiences. Like maybe once you do it with a lot of people, but then you do it on your own. And to me personally, doing certain things on my own and processing certain information on my own has helped me a lot, and it has been like less overwhelming. So I would recommend you guys to sometimes just turn off everything, your computer, your phones, and just try to experience what being a fan is, like without being like connected to the internet. That is also something that is great.
Anyone else would like to know? Okay, so with that, we conclude the last part of this panel. We're now going to start with the questions. If you have anything you would like to ask, you can leave it in the chat on YouTube, and I will read the question. If any of you would like to respond, then sorry, then you can put the little hand.
Raise your hand. Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Ami. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, while we wait for that, just so we don't like stay silent, I think that's interesting what Danny said about enjoying things on your own. Because I don't like enjoying comebacks and whatnot. I don't like doing it on my own because I get bored. But I like doing it with my friends only. Like the past few comebacks that have happened, I cannot stand Twitter when it's comeback season. I can't. It's too much. There's too much information. Everybody has an opinion on everything, and it's very, very, very overwhelming. And so it's also like I care about the opinion of my friends, and to share it, just like if it's good, if it's bad, I don't care about that. I just want to hear what they have to think, because I think that's more fun. But yeah, being surrounded by so many opinions regarding anything, it's a lot to handle as well.
Yeah, me personally, when it comes to music, I like to make my own opinions myself. I think even the past comeback with B, you guys heard the album together, and I took time off to hear it because, yeah, I like to form opinions on music on my own. Not that the thoughts or the opinions of or other people will affect my own, but I like to. There's a certain way in which I like to go over music, and it's like my own method. Listening to the song first, then reading the lyrics, then giving it one more listen. It's a whole thing. So yeah, I think it's very important to know that you can enjoy things however you want to enjoy them, and also very important to know that you can have your own opinions, because most times, and when we're in a community, and when comebacks happen, for example, there's a lot of people reacting, not really um, thinking much of it, because when you react you don't think, and that is fine too. But some of us aren't personally fond of everyone saying they like everything, because it's valid, it's very valid, but I just don't think of it like that. So I like to enjoy things on my own. It's good to know that overall you can choose what you do, and you can choose how to enjoy things, when to enjoy them as well. And because there's this other part, for example, I know a lot of us work, we have jobs, so it is very difficult to stay up for certain things, like comebacks or concerts or any other thing. And There's this with Twitter, I believe there's this certain feeling that you will miss out on a lot of things if you don't, if you aren't there, but they will be there in the morning. So if you cannot, I don't think there's a reason to feel guilty if you can't or don't want to do something that the rest of the fandom seems like they will do, because it's very valid. You guys can do whatever you want as long as you don't harm other people.
I was also feeling to say that now that you're mentioning, like for example, we, we're work partners, but we're also friends. We're colleagues, but we're also friends. So we do like sometimes those streaming sessions, or we watch concerts together. And I think it has been very nice for me because I didn't have it like in previous fandoms. Building this sort of closer group of friends to be able to enjoy it, like outside of my Tumblr dashboard or my Twitter timeline where it's just like random people saying stuff. I think it has been very very good for me to have like this closer group of people that I can just go to like a group chat or like a Zoom session call to talk to, right? And I know that we are like in this sort of safer, but I know like fandoms are meant to be safe environments, but sometimes you also build these communities that are closer and that you feel a lot more comfortable with. And I think that has also been a very important lesson to me. Like, if you have the opportunity to connect with people in closer ways and being able to experience your fandom life also through those communities, which are actually supportive of you, and which that really value you as a person more than just your Twitter icon and username. I think that is also very important and very cool, because have you can have these conversations, and you can have these discussions, and you can also enjoy very much, like listening to music or staying up and watching concerts at like 3 a.m. in the morning. I know we have done that, and scream in the group chat or not, and I think that is very very cool. And it is something that I know a lot of people have done. We have found really close friends to fandom, and I will also emphasize, like, if you can do that, please by all means do. Like, I think it has been very good for us to be able to enjoy things with our friends, with our close friends. Like, even if we are not living in the same cities right now as we speak, but we still have been able to find this community and this support from each other.
Okay, we have a question from Liz OG. How do you think society is going to understand things predominantly liked by women, since we as a society accept things liked predominantly by men? Do you think it's completely influenced by misogyny? Who would like to answer the question? Garie, go ahead.
I do think it's definitely influenced by misogyny, and I don't think it's going to ever be truly accepted. I think the best thing we can do is rebel against it. The other day I was watching a video on kawaii and the way that kawaii was the equivalent to punk in Japan. And I thought it was very interesting because women will always get made fun of, and we have been made fun of for our whole lives, and our moms and our aunts and our grandmas, everybody. So I don't think it's ever going to be like truly accepted and truly people are going to leave us alone. But I think the best thing we can do is keep on doing it, and keep on doing it with our friends, and making younger women know that it's okay to be like that. Like, no matter what people want to make you believe, that you're too old for that, it's too silly, you're wasting your time. Like, if I'm making friends, if I'm finding myself, if I'm able to create spaces like this, how is that a waste of time? In my experience, it has never, ever, ever, ever been a waste of my time. Everything that I have become is because of fandom. And so, yeah, I think things that men like will always be held in a higher esteem, but we know better. We know young women have always been kind of moving the culture. And yeah, I think that's it. I think we're never going to be accepted, but we kind of have to move past that and create our own spaces and accept ourselves and accept other people like us.
Anyone would like to add some more? No? Okay. We have another question from Frida Perez. There's a lot of stigma around being a grown woman who is a fan. How do you think we could help get rid of this? To me, it has happened a lot at my job that people underestimate me because of that. Who would like to? Gali, Lea, please answer.
Sorry, I was muted. This is actually a very important question to me because it's, as we mentioned before, we have a project called Casi Cielo, which is completely funded on the days that it is made by fans for fans, and it's meant to make us proud as fans of being who we are, not only fans, but the person that we are. Much beyond that. With younger women and girls, I believe that it is very important, as Galia said, to remind them that it's okay to like something and it's okay to overflow with love for something. I remember this very particular day. I was taking actually my senior pictures from college, and my mom was somewhere around the place that we were taking them in. We went into a cafe and there was a girl, she was probably 7 years old, 8, that had a BTS sweatshirt. And I came up to her. I was actually going to the bathroom, but she was along the way. I came up to her and I said, I really like your sweatshirt. And she smiled so brightly. And her dad, she was with her dad. She told her, like, you saw that? You saw what she said? Obviously, it looks like I'm grown because I'm wearing a full face of makeup that day. And to be assured that it is okay and that there's other people older than you liking the same things that you do, and that they're doing, grown people things, adult things, and they're still enjoying that same thing that girls do. I think it is very important to reassure them that what they like, it's okay. Liking it is okay. Being a fan is more than okay. There's no reason to criticize something if it makes you happy, in the sense that there's no reason to tell a girl that what she likes is silly or dumb, because what do you gain by that? What does that little girl take away? I know, because it happened with me. So I think that's very important, to reassure them that it is fine, and that us older people who have like certain validity in society like those things as well. But most of all, let them know that loving something is not a crime. It is actually very healing and very beautiful.
Yeah, I want to add something to that that is very particular to my job. I'm a teacher, so I work with teenagers. I work in a high school. And on the first day, I was asking them, like, we did a little show and tell. I told them, like, show me something that represents you. And some of them were saying, like, oh, my earphones, because I love music, a lot of them. And I was like, okay, then what kind of music do you like? And there was one girl in particular who told me, I don't want to say it. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to expose you, but like, can I know at least? Because I had an inkling that it was going to be K-pop. And she told me, like, yeah, it's BTS, but people make fun of the girls who like them and who like idols. And I was like, okay, yeah, you don't have to tell it, but stay with me after the class. And I showed her my wall, and I started showing her, like, I have my Tata plushie right here with me. And I was like, because I always have it around. So, and she was like really happy, and she started showing me her collection. And I was like, oh, that's great, and whatnot. And ever since, I sometimes I have a t-shirt that has like a little cookie, and I have certain things that show that I like BTS. And they really, really like that. I think that has made them a lot more comfortable with me. Some other girls are also really big fans of One Direction. Some of the boys really like video games, and they incorporate that into their work. And that's really interesting, because I think that having somebody that is open to those kinds of things has also made them like open with me. Like, it gives them a space where, okay, here I teach literature, so it's also like a little bit more free. But sometimes they send their work and it will be decorated, and it will one of the girls told me, like, oh, the notebook that I use for your class is a Tata notebook, I think. And when she sent me her work, she scanned it and she made sure to include the little BT21 dolls in the bottom. And I think that's very cute, and I can tell that it means something to them, and it means something to me as well, because I would have loved to have that freedom when I was in school. So yeah, I think that's really particular in my case. But yeah, in my job, dealing with teenagers, it has actually made it a little bit easier to connect with them.
I just want to add something, like in particular to what the stigma happens to be around older fans. I don't think that we are ever going to be able to get rid of it like entirely, because like it's ingrained in society, it's part of it. So I would say that's very difficult when you're older and you like something, that people are going to not have any opinion about it. They're probably going to, well, it depends who you're talking to, but I know there's probably a lot of people that are going to judge us for liking something, especially if we're old. But I would say that I think that it just comes down to not caring what other people might say and their opinion. Like they they will have their opinion, that's their choice, but we need to care about ourselves and what we like. And if it's something that you truly enjoy, well, who cares what other people are going to think of it? I would say that when you start showing that you're proud of what you like, then people start kind of like looking at you in a different way. It happened to us, I think, that when I started saying, hey, I like BTS, and I started sharing things about BTS on Twitter, I had a local account. So most of my friends that did not know what K-pop was started seeing that I was talking a lot about K-pop, and they started freaking out. And I didn't care. I started, I did it, instead of hiding it like I did back on Tumblr. I was like, okay, I'm going to show them who truly I am as a person. And there was people that judged me, and I don't care about them, honestly. And there's people that maybe do not share the same interests that I have, but they were like, wow, she's very happy with that, and they supported me. So I would say that it is just not, it would come down to not caring about it. Like, we need to stop caring about what other people think or might say about what we like. And when we become proud of what we like, it not only empowers us, but it empowers other people around us to maybe share that they like something like that we like too, and that creates community. And I would say that community is what will eventually start killing the stigma. Maybe not to our generation, but to the future generations, as Garie was mentioning, and Gali too. So yeah, being proud and trying to find your community, I would say, is the solution kind of to that. Like, it's not a clear solution, but at least it's something that we can do.
Yeah, Dani, I totally agree, because I've actually experienced, like, I wanna I wanna also speak of, I think it's part of sort of the other side of the coin of Garie, and also really connected to what you were saying, because I'm still in school, I'm in university. So, also if, there's always this stigma, I think, within academic environments also too, like fandom and sharing things you like. And especially I think in university, college, higher education, where you are supposed to be like also this person who is more serious, right, about their career and the things they're learning, or you're supposed to be studying these really serious topics. And fandom is not considered one of those serious topics. And I've also had like those moments where I've been like, should I even address this? Like, that I'm really passionate about, I don't know, BTS or any other fandom. And because I feel like intimidated, right, by this other environment that is really serious and really strict. And I think that I've really felt, even up to like last year, knowing that, I should be proud of the things that I like, and I should embrace it because it's part of who I am, and who cares what other people said. I felt these moments of being a little afraid, or not all sure of sharing like my passions and the things that I like. And I think that, you know, having teachers that have been very open to like, oh, what is it that you like in your daily life, or what are you passionate about, like what pieces of media are you passionate about, what are your hobbies, right? Or having other classmates like speak up of the things that they like has also made me a lot more comfortable with it. So I think it is really a thing that happens, like, you know, if you start being open about it, then there are people who are going to start being open about it. And I think that's like something that happens generally with anything that is stigmatized or that is seen as taboo. Like if you start talking about it, it may be scary and you may need to like gather up the courage to do it, but then other people will start doing it. Like I remember one of my classes for this semester, one of my teachers said, like, you know, the usual thing, like there's a lot of us, not all of us know each other, so let's introduce ourselves. So your name, like what do you like, and just any general fact about you. And I remember that I was like, should I say that I love BTS? Like just outright, like even though I had my wall of posters like behind me and you could clearly see that I like BTS and that I like K-pop, I was like, should I even say it? And I remember one of my classmates before me, like before it was my turn, was the first one to like say, oh, and yeah, this is my name and I love BTS. And people in the chat, like so many people started asking, like, who is your bias? Who are you? You know, you like BTS too. And that was a very special moment. I felt so, you know, seen and welcome. And just having that moment of building up a community, that was very special. So I think it is something that definitely happens, and it is a way we can definitely start changing, you know, like looking down, this whole thing of looking down on fangirls and on women and on people who like things in general. Like, you know, we are emotional beings, and I think it is not great to deny ourselves that part of ourselves where we're really passionate about stuff, and sometimes that stuff is fandom, and that's fine, that's great.
Yeah, maybe to finish this off, I want to add that also this very cool thing that happened at my job the other day. Somehow my boss found out that I like BTS, and he said, oh, so Howie, J-Hope is your bias. And I was like, yeah, who's yours? Because if you know the words bias, you obviously have one. And he said, oh, mine's Suga. He's like, I don't know, he's not old. He's probably like 34, maybe. But you know, ever since I felt like really happy at my job. Not necessarily happy, but you know, like I'm treated as a person, because the other day he mentioned something that he congratulated me on something, and then a J-Hope gif of him going like, and I was like, yeah, this is cool, you know, talking about your interests and having people around there be accepting of them, and you know, not criticizing it mostly, is what makes it special.
Anyone would like to add some more? Okay, well, that it's all we have to say. We are really happy that you all enjoyed the panel. I was looking at the chat and we have a lot of cute messages. A lot of you talking about your experiences and how you relate to what we were saying. So it is really, really comfortable and cute and we love it. Thank you so much for your comments. So yeah, that it's all we all have to say. Anything of you, any one of you would like to add some more to?
Just thank you for being here. Thank you for taking your time off your Sunday to spend a little bit of it with us, and for your comments and for all of the opinions that you were sharing with us. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And if you would like, we were mentioning Casi Cielo a lot, so we also want to say that we are on social media. We're a digital magazine. We talk about all things fans, both, you know, fandom and also other aspects of our lives in general. it's in Spanish because we are we are a Mexican-based magazine. But if you are interested, all our social media is at Casi Cielo MX, as in Mexico. Yeah, Casi Cielo MX. And yeah, you can find us on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram is our main platform. So if you want to read a little bit of what we do and see what we are, yeah, what we stand for, there you can find us. So yeah, thank you so much also to Connects for this space and for everything you've done helping us, set up the panel. And yeah, we're very grateful for also the people who are listening and commenting. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you all for your time.
I put on the chat, I couldn't send the link, I don't know why, but you can find us searching Casi Cielo MX in Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. So we hope you like our content if you're going to visit us there. Thank you so much again. Thank you so much to Connect, like Gali said. And that was it. Thank you so much for being with us today. We are really grateful.
Bye.
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 Bye.